here with famed referee Harvey Doc. What's up, brother?
How you doing, my brother?
I'm very good. How's it going with you?
Everything's great, man. No complaints.
So a little something the fans won't know about you, or they probably don't know about you, is that you used to be an amateur fighter. Tell us a little bit about your amateur background.
Yeah, I did some amateur boxing for a few years. I won a few local tournaments. You know, nothing extravagant. Won the Golden Gloves in the state tournaments. You know, got my feet wet in the boxing game a little bit before I started officiating. So I enjoyed that.
You went to the Nationals as well.
I did.
Who were some of the notable names that were in the Nationals at the same time?
So '94, I was out there with the very young Floyd Mayweather.
What?
I was out there with the young Fernando Vargas. I was out there with the young Zab Judah. And when you saw those guys as young teenagers, you knew they were special talents, and they were going to go on to have good pro careers as they did. And Antonio Tarver. Antonio Tarver was knocking everybody out in the light heavyweight division. So you didn't want to walk around that light heavyweight division around that time, because Tarver was not just winning, he was knocking guys dead. So yeah, I had a chance to see some future champions.
So you were around the '96 Olympic team.
Yeah, so I was on the national circuit more in '93, '94. So those guys were already competing at that level. At '93, '94, they were already on the national circuit, ranked in the top 5 in the country back then. So the writing was already on the wall for the guys that I just named. Even young guys, I think David Diaz too.
When you think back to Floyd at that time, did you think he would ever be as huge as he is today?
Well, I don't know if you could ever predict being as huge as he is, but you knew he was a phenomenal talent. He was maybe 16 years old back then when I saw him compete. And at the Nationals, there's 3 rings going on at one time, and everybody would stop and just focus on his ring because he was that special. Floyd was phenomenal. So you knew he was a special talent, but I don't think you could ever predict being as big as he's gotten or has been.
Did you ever get to spar with any of those guys?
No. The only guys that I sparred that you may have heard of was a guy named Charles Murray. He was a junior welterweight champion. There was a top contender named Terrence Ali. He was really good. He even fought for the title. He fought Julio Cesar Chavez, but none of the guys I just mentioned, no.
What was it like back then? Because I know you guys probably had a lot of competition coming in from New York City, because that was really like, I would say, the last real heyday of amateur boxing, that '90 class that you came out of.
Yeah, the '90s on the East Coast, West Coast, it's not much different. I mean, you have your strong concentration areas in the country, New York, New Jersey, California, Texas. They consistently produce a lot of really good fighters. And I mentioned Zab Judas from New York. There were just a lot of great talent from New York. Riddick Bowe, he was some years early. He was already pro by then, but he was a great New York fighter, came up through that amateur ranks. So many of them. So many, I can't even name all of them. But New York, New Jersey, they've always produced quite a few national champions.
Now I'm going to have to put you on the spot now.
Okay.
Which city produces the best boxers, or has produced the best boxers?
It's hard to say. I mean, if you really go by concentration, I would say somewhere at the top is probably Philadelphia. Philly produces a lot of great fighters. So I don't know if there's a study that would show which cities produce the most national champions, but I would imagine Philadelphia, New York City, they have to be right up there near the top, in certain parts of California and Texas.
So you were 6'1".
Yes.
You are 6'1".
Yes.
You fought at super welterweight, or?
Well, that's where I won some titles. I actually started when I was about 15, so I was like a long, lanky 132 pounder, which would be considered a lightweight.
So how was it dropping weight? It kind of reminds me of Jared Hurd a little bit because he's a 6'1" bigger guy that fights in at that weight class.
Yeah, no comparison. I wasn't doing whatever he's doing to cut weight. I didn't walk around 25, 30 pounds over my fight weight to make weight. So, you know, at most as a young kid whose metabolism is burning fast, maybe I was walking around 10 pounds overweight. So I didn't have a drastic weight cut the way a lot of these professionals do it today.
Okay, so you were around the weight.
Yeah, I was, you know, a teenager. So, you know, weight cut wasn't a big issue for me. You know.
So how would you compare? Who would you compare your fighting style to?
I don't know if I would compare myself to anyone. I was, you know, I tried to box like most tall, rangy fighters. I tell you who I used to watch, who I tried to fight like if I could. Mark Breland was awesome. Mark Breland was long, lanky, and he knew how to keep guys at bay, and when they got too close, he'd drop that right-hand bomb on them. I mean, I think a lot of tall, long, lanky guys watched Mark. Mark was a little older than a lot of amateurs from my generation, but we watched guys like him. If you had that body frame and, you know, you tried to structure certain things and take certain things away, and he showed you how a long, lanky, tall fighter could be successful. Not many people did it like Mark, but yeah. Mark was somebody to watch if you had that long, lanky frame like I do.
Did you study Hearns at all? Because I noticed, I was watching a video of you fighting in the amateurs, and you turned to right like Hearns.
Well, Hearns was one of my idols, as were a lot of guys from the late 70s and early 80s. So it wasn't just Tommy, it was that whole great trio. It was Hearns, it was Hagler, it was Duran, it was Leonard, who's, by the way, my favorite fighter. All of those guys, and you try and learn and watch all of those guys. But I didn't study anyone in particular. I just used to enjoy watching those guys.
So we mentioned Floyd Mayweather earlier,
right.
And you two guys have something in common that I found out. You guys are both undefeated in the pros. Floyd is 50-0, and you're 1-0. Tell us about your one pro fight.
Oh man, that's funny. No, you know, obviously I didn't have Floyd Mayweather type talent, so I knew my limitations. I had a decent amateur career, and I had one pro fight. It was more or less to say this is something that I've done for a while. I wanted to give it a shot. I tried it, but I knew it was nothing I wanted to make a living off of. So I went on and, you know, joined the regular working world, you know. Yeah.
How'd it go? I'm guessing it was a 4-rounder.
Yes, it was a 4-round fight. I won a decision, won a unanimous decision. I don't even remember the guy's name. That was a long time ago.
Mr. Mack.
Was that his name?
Mack, yeah.
Mack, okay,
yeah,
okay.
Last name Mack, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, it's good to have that notch on your record. But yeah, it was cool.
So what was it about that fight where you were like, I'm going into the working world?
Well, it wasn't about that fight. I knew beforehand. So I knew going into the fight that I didn't plan on having or making boxing a career. You know, like I said, I traveled and I was on that national circuit with real talent, you know, the guys I've mentioned already. So you know if you have that type of talent or if you don't have that type of talent. As you hear many guys say, there's levels to this thing. So, you know, that Floyd Mayweather, Antonio Tarver, that's a level that few men can reach. So I sat back and watched, and I'm glad I took the road that I did. I became an official.
So you were thinking about getting into boxing promotion at one time.
Yeah.
Did you promote your pro fight?
I did not. I promoted after my pro fight. I tried it anyway. Promoting is a tough business, which is why you only see a few promoters that consistently do shows on the highest levels. So yeah, I gave it a shot. I put on a couple of club shows. They you know, I lost a lot of money and realized that, at least at that time, it wasn't for me.
What were some of the major challenges that you faced while trying to be a promoter?
So those are some political issues that
Gotcha.
I can't even start to go into detail about. So
Say no more.
yeah, it's very tough to say the least. It's real tough business. So you need some friends in some high places, and you need some money if you want to be a lasting promoter.
So how'd you cross over into officiating?
Well, after I stopped competing as an amateur and I had the one pro fight, I wanted to stay with the sport, and officiating just seemed a natural transition. So there were guys who I knew from being an amateur boxer, and they were friends, and they got me started. I'll mention their names actually, David Fields and Benji Estevez. They were extremely crucial in mentoring me and guiding me through my amateur officiating career. And they actually, those two specifically, taught me everything I knew about officiating. So, and you see that they're two of the best officials in the world. So I learned from the best.
So say there's a young guy out there that
Right.
wants to get into officiating.
Right.
Can you break down the route from the amateurs up to refereeing Wilder Brazil?
Well, first off, I mean, it's crawling before you walk. So you have to go through the amateur process. I think most states, at least on the East Coast, you have to put 5 years in the amateurs. I don't know if there's a number of bouts you have to do in other states, but at least I know in New Jersey, New York, probably the prominent states, you have to put a significant amount of time in the amateurs. So after you've put in, let's say it's New Jersey, put in your 5 years, you can apply for a pro license. And you know, fights, they don't have as many fights as they used to back when we were growing up. So there's not a lot of opportunities, but the route to go is through the amateurs first. And you know, you mentioned Wilder Brazil and a few other fights. I mean, I've been fortunate, but you know, the referees that I know, nobody gets into the sport to say, I want to do the fight on, or big fights on that level. You get into it because you love it, you enjoy it. And you know, when I started as an amateur, there were no thoughts of taking this thing to, you know, doing professional fights. I was just happy to do it, you know, on the amateur circuit, traveling on the national circuit with the amateur teams, just seeing the young talent out there. So, you know, you do it because you love it. That's what I would say first and foremost. After that, you find your amateur local commission and take it from there.
Now, being on such big stages and around such exciting fights, do you ever catch yourself becoming a spectator at times?
No. I try to stay focused on the job at hand. Once I'm in the ring, doesn't matter whether it's a big fight or a small club show. You have to stay focused once you're in there. And, you know, once you let your mind drift into thinking about the environment and stuff, that's where you can have mistakes. So you have to be focused when you're in the ring. So it doesn't matter, you know, whether it's a club show or a bigger fight. I don't let my mind drift once I'm doing a bout. It's serious business in there, and guys get hurt. So it's very important to stay focused once you're officiating two grown men or even women that's trying to take each other's heads off, you know.
Are there some fights that's harder to officiate than others? Like heavyweight fights, are they harder to officiate? So big and
for me, the hardest fights to officiate are the fights where you have a lot of tangling up and holding and grappling. Those fights are the toughest. And you can have grappling fights with lightweights. You can have heavyweights that don't break. Those are the toughest because you have to manage, you know, Do I break them? Do I let them try and fight out of it? You know, and that just comes with experience. But that can be, it's not by weight class, it's by the styles of the two fighters. And the styles of the two fighters can be extremely messy. You know, you got guys falling to the canvas because they wrapped each other up and neither one of them wants to let the other one go. So it's the chemistry of the fight that can be difficult. It doesn't necessarily go by weight, but by the two fighters and what they bring to the table.
Now, what's the actual rule? What are the actual rules on clinching? Because I've seen fighters get points taken away because of clinching. How does this all work out?
So there's a fine line between clinching and holding. So I think a basic line is if a guy is holding and he's not or she's not letting the other one go, you have grounds for warnings and then eventual point deductions. Sometimes people clinch and it's strategic. They might throw a combination and then clinch and then let go and then get out of the way. They slide off left or right and you won't say anything, you know. So there's, like I said, a fine line between holding and clinching. Clinching is strategic. They might tie you up with one hand, but the other fighter and them have one hand and it's still working, so you let them fight their way out of it. You just have to see the chemistry and see if they're holding or are they clinching. A hold is basically illegal. You might give a warning or two and then for the most part, they'll adjust. But a clinch is strategic, and sometimes you'll have both guys clinching. And if both guys are clinching, you'll let them clinch a little bit because they might strategically be trying to find ways to work on the inside. So each situation is different, but I would say the line between something legal and not legal is a hold or a clinch.
Okay. Yeah. So is it legal to clinch one arm and hit with the other arm?
Yeah, the referees will normally tell the fighters before the fight, or a lot of them will say, if you have a hand free, I'm going to let you work on the inside. You know, so yeah, if a hand is free and they're still trying to work, 9 times out of 10, you'll let them try and work their way out of it.
And what happens if they don't let go in a clinch? Like, because I've seen some fighters look like they were super glued together, impossible to break.
So if that becomes a hold. So if they're just holding at that point, then you may start issuing warnings, and after that, if your verbal warnings don't work, then you might get to a situation where you start taking points away. But I mean, you're going to be, let's say, lenient in a situation where they're holding because they got hurt. If they got hurt or if they got knocked down and they got up and they're holding, that's just their survival instincts kicking in. So that's actually showing you as the official that, they have their wits about them and they're just trying to survive this foggy moment that they're going through. So, at that point, you might, as an official, get in there and just try and break them up a little bit quicker so you're not forced to, let's say, take a point away, because they're showing you signs that they're okay, and that's a sign that they want to continue.
So with continuing, let's take that premise. So a guy gets hurt, he gets up, he clinches.
Mm-hmm.
When will a fight be stopped? Is it if the guy's not punching back, or if he's clinching or holding too much? When will a referee jump in and just stop it?
Well, it depends on how much damage the fight is taking. I mean, it all comes down to fighter safety. Mm-hmm. So if he got hurt, obviously you're watching him hurt a little bit closer to see how much follow-up damage is taking place. So they're going to take damage in a professional fight. But what you don't want them to take is unnecessary damage, unnecessary punishment you'll often hear. So if they're in the fight, they're holding, but they're fighting back, then you're going to let it roll. But let's say they're holding and they're continuing to take punishment. Once they get to the point, let's say, where they can no longer safely defend themselves, then that's when you're getting to a point where you're going to have to stop it. So there's no right or wrong answer there. Each situation is different. So what's the point where a guy can no longer defend himself? You have to make that judgment when you're in there. You know, when is a guy taking unnecessary punishment, or is he taking just punishment, but he still has, or she still has her wits about her, and she's still cagey enough to withstand this foggy moment that he or she is in, and they can work themselves out of it. So that's just having a keen eye for the situation at hand. I mean, what I can tell you works in this fight may not work in the next fight. Right. You know, so you just have to be in the moment, you know.
And when does the doctor step in? When does it become up to the doctor's discretion to stop a fight?
So in many states, the doctor will come up. Let's say a guy is really hurt after a round ends. The doctor may want to come and take a look at him between rounds, and then the doctor and the referee, they may consult with each other based on how much punishment that fight is taking. So many times a doctor will tell a referee, well, let's keep a close eye on him. Let's keep a close eye on her between rounds. Very rarely will you see a doctor come up during the actual round. They normally come up after the round is ended, and they want to just have an evaluation process. And during that process, the doctor and the referee, they'll consult with one another many times, and they'll make a decision. But we often take our cues from the doctor there, you know, because we're not medical professionals, so they may say they've taken enough punishment, stop it right away. So many times, whatever that decision is, it may completely be up to the doctor. Every now and then they'll want some input, or they'll just tell the referee, keep a close eye on him.
Can there be a time where a doctor stops the fight mid-round?
Oh, absolutely. So more times than not, that could be based on a cut. So if a fight is taking place, a fighter gets cut, it's a really bad cut, the blood is flowing, the doctor doesn't feel the blood can be stopped, the cornerman won't be able to stop it, the doctor can stop it right then and there. The referee just call time, take him to the doctor will assess it, and many times will say, okay, that's it, the fighter can't go on anymore.
And are there any specific guidelines for cuts, or if it's just blocking the vision, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's a hard, definitive, specific guideline on cuts. I think more times than not, it's based on, can the fighter still see? Is that blood flowing into his eye where he can or can't see? That's why oftentimes the doctor will hold a few fingers up, and the fighter will be forced to answer, you know, how many fingers he has up. The doctor just wants to know, can you see? And if you can see, you can defend yourself. If you can't see, the fight's over. That's typically what will happen with a doctor's decision. Can he see or can he not see?
Can he see? Okay. With counts and knockdowns, is it a 10-second count, or explain that? 'Cause
no, it's a 10 count. It's completely the referees and the alternate referees count. So when a fighter goes down, first of all, the referee doesn't start counting from 1. When there's a knockdown, we have to get our count from the alternate ref. The alternate ref is sitting outside of the ring, and they'll give us the count where to pick it up from. So there's no 10-second count. I think a lot of people confuse the fight is down for 10 seconds. It's not a 10-second count. It's a 10 count. So everybody counts differently. It's somewhere around 10 seconds. It could be a fast count. It could be a slow count. It could be it might be 9 seconds. It might be 13 seconds. But there's no 10-second count. It's just a count. And we count to 10. And if we get to 10 before a guy is up, fight's over. If the boxer's up before 10, then we do an assessment and we determine if we're going to let the fight continue or not. But it's not a 10-second count. It's not 10 seconds. It's just a 10 count. So however I'm deciding to count is how I count. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, you could be doing 1 1,000, 2 1,000. You know, whatever. However you decide to count is how you count. There's no such thing as 10 seconds.
So is that the referee's discretion or the assistant referee?
So once the referee picks up the count, then the referee is in sole possession of the count.
Okay.
Yeah. sole possession. So at that point, it's the referee's count. Prior to him picking up the count, we'll just pick up the count from the alternate ref. Whatever his or her count is at the time, we pick it up. We might pick it up at 4. We might pick it up at 3. We could pick it up at 6. But whenever we pick that count up, we just continue what the alternate ref started.
And when does a knockdown technically become a knockdown? Is it
as soon? So the rule is, if you get hit, any part of your body that touches the canvas is going to be considered a knockdown. So at the knockdown, as soon as he's or she's down, as soon as she touches down, that count should be starting when that person hits the canvas.
So say a fighter gets knocked down and is up at 9. How long is the assessment, or how much time will they be given?
It's totally up to the discretion of the official.
Okay.
Yeah, the referee will have sole discretion. So what you've been seeing over the last couple of years at least is referees doing an assessment. Sometimes if the fight is really hurt and we're not certain if we're going to let the bout continue, we may have the fighter take 2 or 3 steps to their left, their right, just to see if their cognition is working. And if it is, we'll oftentimes let them go.
And what's the rule on the standing 8, on the 8 count?
It's a mandatory 8 count once a fighter goes down. There's no standing 8 counts. Standing 8 counts went out, I believe, in the mid to late 80s. But when a fighter goes down, there's a mandatory 8 count. So if the fighter goes down, if he gets up, she gets up at 2, we still have to count to 8. That's called the mandatory 8 count. But a standing 8 count is an amateur rule. And it used to be in some states in the pros, where you can be standing on your feet but taking a lot of punishment, and if the referee wants to give an assessment at that point, he'll stop the box, stop the match at that point, put the fighter in a neutral corner and give a standing 8 count. But again, that's more of an amateur rule than it is a professional rule.
And is there an assessment done after the mandatory 8 count as well?
Yes. So you'll give so you're actually evaluating him before you actually get to 8. You know, you're taking everything in. It's not once you get to 8. I'm examining everything, body language, the want to continue, so many different things I'm taking into account in just a few seconds. So I'm looking at everything once a guy gets up, and you know, once he gets to 8, you know, the evaluation had already begun. So by the time I get to 8, I pretty much have an idea if I'm going to allow that match to continue or not.
If there's a fight without the 3 knockdown rule, and the fighter, say, gets knocked down 5 times, will that round be scored 10-5? Or how low can a fighter go on the scale?
That's
more of a judge question.
Yeah, that's more of a judge question. That I believe they can go as low as 10-6, but don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% certain. And 9 times out of 10, you're not going to see a fighter go down 5 times and that fight continues. Not in one round.
Okay.
Yeah. 3 times in a round used to be the rule. In most states, it's no longer the rule. So a good example of understanding the knockdown rule and just giving a good assessment, I think a lot of referees learn from one another. Joe Cortez had the first fight with Manny Pacquiao and Juan Manuel Marquez, and Marquez went down 3 times in one round, and Joe, who's a phenomenal Hall of Fame referee, just analyzed the situation, let the fight continue, and that turned out to be a great fight. Of what did they have, 4 fights?
Yeah, they had 4 fights. He came back to box him to a draw in that fight.
That's right. He came back and had a draw. So, yeah, 3 times doesn't necessarily end the match. You have to do your evaluation, and that's a classic example of knowing how to analyze when a fighter goes down multiple times.
What do you love most about refereeing?
Well, I love the sport of boxing. So it's refereeing and seeing guys compete. I love everything about it. The officiating part I love is using judgment. you hope to make the right judgments, at the right time. But the sport itself and every aspect of it, I've grown up with the sport, so it's not just the officiating aspect. I love watching guys compete. I mean, I go to a lot of fights that I don't officiate in just to watch. Sometimes I'm sitting high up just watching the fight, So I'm just a fight fan. So I enjoy watching officials work. We learn from one another, and I enjoy watching good competition. So the sport overall is just something I have a passion for.
How'd you become a fight fan?
Before I even started, just growing up in that era with the guys I mentioned, Leonard, Hearns, Hagler, Duran, Larry Holmes, Salvador Sanchez, Azuma Nelson. After that, Marlon Starling, Donald Curry, Michael Nunn, James Toney. Seeing these guys, I was just a fight fan. I love the sport. Just seeing good competition at the highest level is something that I've always enjoyed, but not just at the highest level. I love seeing 4-round club shows. Sometimes you'll have some of your best matches be 4-round fights, 6-round fights. So I'm just a fight fan. Grew up a fight fan. Grew up a sports fan in general, but always loved the fights themselves.
When with fights, are the officials booked through the commission or the sanctioning body?
So each state has its own commission, and the officials are assigned by that state commission. So the organizations will assign fights typically out of the country. So if they want you to officiate a match in Brazil, Russia, wherever, and you're a member of one of the organizations, whichever one it may be, you'll get a notification from that organization, and they'll say, we want you to officiate this fight wherever it may be out of the country. But in the states, typically the state commission will assign all officials, that being referees, judges, the doctors, the inspectors. That's totally up to the state commission, whichever state you're working in.
How does the registration work with officials in the boxing commissions? Do you have to join? Is it a test you have to take? How do you get with a certain...
To get licensed, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so like I said, coming out of the amateurs, you apply for a license. Once you are accepted, once you have been given or granted a license, you have to go through a renewal process every year. So whichever state you've been issued a license, after each year you go through a physical and you just get that license renewed, if you will. Initially, it can be tough because, like I said, many states may not have any openings at the time based on how many fights that they're having per year. So there's a paperwork process where you fill out the application, you submit your resume. It has years of experience related to it initially. After that first year, like I said, then it's just a renewal process.
And how do you register with each sanctioning body?
You have to apply. Same thing, paperwork. So there's paperwork. You fill out. You give them basically a resume on paper, if you will. You apply, and that comes with a fee. So you submit your paperwork. It's an application. You submit that with whatever the fee is for that organization. Each organization has a different fee, and you submit it, and hopefully you'll be accepted. More times than not, the organizations will accept you if you've been a professional official for a certain amount of years. They encourage you to come to their seminars. They have seminars all over the world. They can be in the States. They can be, I think the IBF has a convention right now that's taking place in China. So as we speak, their convention is going on right now in China. And at these conventions, you learn a lot. They have judges seminars. They have referee seminars. And one of the officials from the judges, the referees, they'll conduct that seminar, the organizations encourage that because it's a learning process. So if you come to the convention, you go to the seminar, they suspect that you're going to learn something and take something from it. So it's a good way to become a member as well, and you're learning.
Wow, this is very interesting.
Speaking of which, I think you mentioned Jack Reese earlier. He does quite a few seminars around the country. And in fact, I think he does them all over the world. He does quite a few conventions for different organizations, and he does a really good job. I've been to a couple of conventions that a couple of seminars that he's presented, and he normally does a pretty good job. I think Robert Byrd as well does a lot of seminars. So they go, they travel the world and they give you the finer points of refereeing.
Wow, that's crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, the judges do it too. The judges have judges that go over the fine points of judging. I think Steve Weisfeld, who's a well-known boxing judge, he does quite a few seminars as well. So yeah, I mean, guys that you've heard of, they've probably put on a few seminars in their careers.
When was your first pro fight?
2004.
2004.
Yes.
So 15 years of officiating.
Yes.
How has officiating evolved in those 15 years?
Well, for the most part, it's always been about the safety and welfare of the fighter. That's not going to change. But what I mentioned earlier, what we started to institute a couple of years ago, is more evaluations from the referee, because we're checking cognitive operations of the fighters, where we have a little bit more leeway in analyzing a fighter's ability to continue, which points directly to having them walk and checking out their balance and just seeing if they're functioning properly. So, but for the most part, it's always going to be about the health and safety of the fighters, knowing that they're going to get hurt because it's a hurt business, but not unnecessarily. So in that sense, it hasn't changed much.
So is the check just a motor skill check, like walking and moving the arms, or is it cognitive as well, where you ask questions to see?
Yeah, we may ask a question. It's motor skills as well. So we're taking cognitive, motor skills all into account in seconds, and we have to make decisions in seconds. So that comes with experience and analyzing these things quickly, because you have to make a decision quickly.
So what's the typical question you would ask a fighter?
So that's funny, because you typically ask them, are they okay? Do you want to continue? And 95 out of 100 fighters are typically going to say, I'm okay, yes, I want to continue. So, we might have to advance the questioning with that, because it's just reflexive that they say, yes, I'm okay, yes, I want to continue. It's more, you're asking it, but at the same time you're asking it, you're evaluating at the same time. So you're not so much paying attention to the answer, but you're watching body language. You're looking to see if his eyes are focused when he's answering you. How focused is he when he's speaking to you? Did he absorb what you were telling him? So there's a few different things you're taking into account as he's answering. It's just giving us a couple of seconds to do our evaluation process. So my point is, you're not so much focused on his answer, you're more focused on how he answered, how he's moving, how competitive he is in the match when he's been hurt. So there's a few different things we're taking into account, not just he answered me, he said he wants to continue, so I'm going to let him continue. So it's a little bit more than that.
Have you ever gotten any crazy answers back after asking a question where you're like, whoa, I got to stop now?
Well, not a crazy answer, but you have fighters that they won't. Some of them won't answer you, and that's a sure sign that they don't want to continue. Some of them will just shake their, you'll ask them if they're okay, and they just shake their head. They just honestly say, let you know that, no, I don't want to continue. You know, so, but I haven't gotten any off the wall crazy answers. If they don't want to fight, even if they say yes, sometimes their body language might let you know that they've had enough. So that's why the evaluation process is real critical.
Does the question warrant a verbal response, or can a fighter nod yes?
Oh yeah.
Keep going. Do
yes.
They have to say yes.
Well, I'm not going to speak for every referee, but for me, if I know that the fight is okay, if he gave me a nod, I may let him continue without needing to hear a verbal answer. I've had fighters who were, they've been knocked down and they've been on one knee, and I've been counting while they've been on one knee, and they just look at me and they give me a nod, and once they got up, I don't even ask them if they're okay, because I already know they're okay. They'll get to, once I get to 8, once I completed my mandatory 8 count, I just wipe the gloves off and let them go, you know.
So it's not like the exit roll on the airplane. They say, we need a verbal response. Will you help us if something happens?
No, you don't. It's not mandatory to get a verbal answer. You just have to know that they're okay to continue. Okay. And I will often say in my pre-fight instructions in the dressing room, which people don't see, I'll say, if you're hurt, or if you go down rather, and you get up, you have to let me know that you're okay to continue. And that doesn't have to be verbal. That can be just putting your hands up, let me know you're okay. That can be showing, I know from his body language that he wants to continue. And like you suggested, he may just nod, or she may just nod at me to let me know that they're okay. And if they give me that nod and you see that determination in them, then you just let them go.
So another thing with talking, can a fighter talk to the other fighter? Because I see some fights where fighters are like talking trash and the referee's like, shut up. Are there any rules against trash talking?
No, but I guess it can be annoying to some officials. I haven't had a lot of that. I mean, more times than not, first of all, you have a mouthpiece in your mouth, so it's pretty hard to have a conversation with the mouthpiece in your mouth. You may have, you know, a one-liner that somebody's just telling the other fighter, come on, come on, come on, you know, and all they're really doing is just pumping themselves up, you know, more than anything. Very rarely are they having conversations with one another, you know, but it's more so to like I said, pump themselves up, and I typically won't intervene with the fighter just saying, come on, come on. And I haven't had anything too much crazier than that.
Okay.
You know.
So there's no like rules?
No, it's not a set rule about no talking. No. No.
During the pre-fight instructions, do you guys go through the whole manual, or?
No. So that's a good question. So like if there's a title fight, the day of the weigh-in, they've been given a more detailed list of pre-fight instructions. So they're told what to do in case of a knockdown. If they want to check, and this is typically the commission or a member of the commission going, giving a lot more detail, checking with the trainer to make sure they have 2 mouthpieces. If the mouthpiece comes out, just continue to fight. If there's a lull in the action, the mouthpiece will be replaced. In case of a knockdown, go to the furthest neutral corner, stay there until we tell you to come out. I mean, it'd be a lot more deliberate at the weigh-in. However, on fight night, you're, as an official, you want to give a very condensed version of that, because those guys, they're in fight mode by then. So, you know, they really, for the most part, don't want to be bothered at that point. You're just going over a couple of bullet points, some highlights from what they heard the day before, to let them know that these are the things you expect of them. And typically it's just, you know, make sure you're listening to my commands. You know, if I say something, I expect you to obey my commands, you know, more so than anything. There's a few things I'll touch over, which is just a formality, but aside from, you know, obeying my commands, if the mouthpiece comes out, keep fighting. Once you go into that dressing room, 9 times out of 10, they're getting their hands taped, their gloves put on, and they're already in fight mode. And they already heard a slow, deliberate, detailed version of the rules the day before anyway. And typically we're using unified rules anyway. So guys at the 8, 10, 12 round level, they pretty much know what's expected of them. You know, there's nothing, especially on the world title fight level, there's nothing you're going to tell them that they probably haven't heard already, because they've graduated up to that 12 round level. So they've heard the rules from when they were 4 rounders and 6 rounders and 8 rounders. And like I said, as a formality, you're just going over what you expect from them.
Can we expect a Harvey Doc catchphrase in a future?
Absolutely not.
We got I'm fair but firm.
No.
What's another one? I'm fair but firm.
No.
There's so many catchphrases.
No.
Will it be a Harvey Doc?
No catchphrases. No catchphrases.
Come on, HD.
No.
HD, high definition.
No.
We can work on one now.
No. You can work on it, not me. I won't utilize it. No. I'm happy to do the fights the way I've been doing them. No catchphrases for me.
All right, but if I think of one, will you rather put it?
Maybe in the gym. Maybe I practice it in the gym, but I can't promise you I'm going to use it in an actual fight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So no catchphrase.
No catchphrase.
Oh man, I was hoping it'll be a good one.
No, I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna leave that to the real seasoned pros. I'm gonna leave that one alone.
Fight to the end of the clock with Doc.
No, you won't hear anything from me.
The fight gonna get stopped if you get rocked with Doc.
It sounds good, but I don't think I'm gonna use it. You know? You gotta come. Maybe if you come up with something better, I'll consider it.
Okay.
I'll leave the door cracked.
Leave it cracked.
I'll leave it cracked for you.
Okay.
Just a small crack.
Because everybody got a catchphrase.
Not everybody.
There's a lot of catchphrases. You know, you get used to hearing people saying it now.
Right,
like,
right.
Certain things, you know.
Right. No, I don't anticipate that.
It's like a rhythm. It's like part of the ritual almost.
Right,
like I'm like,
right.
Okay, he's
Right.
about to say it.
Right,
and
right.
sometimes it's better than the show.
Yeah, well, I won't be a part of that show.